SDR-Preservation Core Work Cycle. And the high-level goals in our current work cycle is to implement a scalable, robust, long-term preservation service for Stanford. In particular, we want to be able to store multiple archives of our objects in more than one location, both local and using the cloud. And we also want to try and keep the storage costs down. In addition to geographically distributed storage, we also want to implement the tracking and recovery of preserved objects. And that means that we want to do regular inventory checks and be able to perform a recovery from any lost or damaged preservation objects that we may have. And at this point, I'd like to just point out the architecture diagram that we have here that forms a sort of a start of our work. I realize that the architecture diagram is sort of overwhelming to begin with, but I just want to draw your attention to the first couple of components that we started working on. That is the Preservation Core Catalog in green here, and the yellow Moab Object Store. You can see that the Preservation Core Catalog takes its input from the ingest workflow as well as the Moab Object Store, and it provides services that are supposed to facilitate the audit and recovery of the preserved objects. So during the sprint, we've started defining and refining the architecture and design of the new preservation services, and we also began creating many workable tickets from the initial stories that were provided to us. In addition to this initial analysis, we also started implementation work, and in particular, we focused on the what we call the Object Inventory Store, which sits here in the middle of the Preservation Core Catalog. And the Object Inventory Store is essentially a data store that holds information on all of the preserved objects and their locations in order to facilitate later audit, of course. There are two code bases that we've touched so far in our work. And the first one that I want to show to you is what we call the Preservation Core Catalog. And this is a brand new GitHub repository, a brand new code base. And what the Preservation Core Catalog is, it's basically a Rails API and that supports preservation audit services. Off with here is, as you can see, we've set up the regular common infrastructure that we have with our applications. So we have GitHub badges for our Travis builds, for our coveralls code coverage of our tests, for our gem dependencies, for our version. We've also set up things like the copy strong or deploy to our servers, as well as using the shared configs for configuring our deployed applications. In addition to sort of that initial groundwork, we've started the implementation of an initial Postgres database that is going to store information on all of these preserved objects. And we've also started defining an API for that database. So currently we have add and update actions for preserved objects. And we've also started working on an API that communicates with the current preservation store, the Moab store. The other code base that I wanted to show you that we've been working in is an older one. It's an existing code base that's called Moab versioning. And Moab versioning is basically, it's a gem that facilitates the retrieval of single files and full using versions of those objects. So this is the old Moab versioning GitHub page. This is the new page over here. You can see that we've added the usual badges. We've also added a lot of information in the README regarding how to use, how to configure the Moab versioning gem, as well as information on how it's basically designed and what the various modules and classes in Moab versioning do. In addition to to that work, we've also done quite a bit of refactoring in order to bring Moab versioning the gem up to our current standards. And that's basically what we've been working on in our first sprint. In the upcoming sprint, we're going to focus on defining the various APIs that tie all the components together, as well as focus on seeding our initial database with objects that we currently store in Moab. And that is everything we had for this demo. Thanks for watching.